Holy shit, what the fuck did I just read? Am I gonna give this book 5 stars? Like, was this 5 stars? This book takes the cake for being the weirdest book that I've ever read. Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby, and today we're gonna be starting on a very fun reading vlog where I'm going to be reading some very weird books. I think you know that using the term weird when it comes to books can be a little bit difficult to figure out, like, what exactly do you mean by that? Because I think the word weird in general is very subjective, but I also think there is a very specific kind of book that we can all agree, like, yeah, those are kind of weird books. And today I'm gonna be reading 4 different books that have been recommended by some other booktubers. Earlier this year, I read the book Big Swiss for the first time, and that kind of like inspired me to want to do a video like this in the first place, because I read Big Swiss and it was like one of the weirdest books that I've ever read, but it really just gripped me. Like, I don't know, there was something about this book. It really like had me by the neck the entire time I was listening to this on audio. And so I just thought, wow, like maybe I should be reading more like weird literary fiction books. I feel like a lot of the times when I do read like weird books, they're mostly in like the horror genre. I thought I would quickly go through some books that I've read that I've enjoyed that I think are kind of weird. I mean, like, Hello, Bunny by Mona Awad is one of my favorite horror books, but it's definitely one of the weirdest books that I've ever read. There's also the Book of the Most Precious Substance, which I also think is very strange. We have Follow Me to Ground. There's Cursed Bunny. I also think Tender is the Flesh is a horror book that's pretty weird. There's also Mother Thing, as well as A Certain Hunger. Another horror novella is Comfort Me with Apples. This one is definitely very strange. And then we have Catherine House, which is another horror book that I think is pretty weird. And then also Out There by Kate Folk, and this one's actually a collection of short stories. So those are some books that I personally would categorize as like being kind of weird. And so today, for today's video, I decided to pick 4 books based off of some booktube recommendations. There's actually been a ton of videos made online that are like weird litfic books for weird girls and videos like of that nature. So I decided to pull some recommendations from videos of this kind. First one is going to be this book called I'm a Fan. Now this book actually published in 2022, but more recently I've been seeing some of my friends reading this online. I actually heard about this book from my friend Lexi. She was the first person that I heard ever talking about this book, and I thought it sounded so interesting, and she went on to love this book and give it 5 stars. And then I also recently saw my friend Jan over from Jan Agaton. She recently read this and she also ended up loving it, and she actually messaged me on Instagram saying she really thinks that I would like this one. And so because of my 2 friends reading this and really loving it, I just thought I have to add it to this TBR. And all I know about this one is that we're following this woman who gets obsessed with this other woman online. She becomes kind of like an online stalker and she's stalking this woman online. That's all I know about it, and it sounds like it's gonna be pretty weird, so I can't wait to read it. The next book that I'm gonna be reading for this video is gonna be My Year of Rest and Relaxation, which this is a book that I've heard a lot about over the years. And this one was recommended by 3 different booktubers. It popped up on 3 different lists. It was featured in Cameron's video on YouTube. It was also featured in Boston Gabrielle's video, as well as Biblio Obscura, which is so exciting that it was mentioned 3 separate times. This is another book that I had no idea what it was about jumping into it, but apparently it's about a woman who is attempting to sleep for an entire year. It does sound pretty weird. Another book that I'm going to be reading for this video is going to be Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. This is one that I had never really even heard of myself, but it popped up on 3 different YouTube video recommendation lists. This one was also featured on that same video from Cameron. It was featured on a video from Leah Crumpton on YouTube, and then it was also featured in a video from Reading Nymph on YouTube. And because this is one that I have no idea what it's really about, or like I'm not really familiar with this book at all, but from what I heard, it's about this female photographer who takes pictures of these boys, but then I think it's about how like shit is not as it seems and there's something more sinister going on. And then the last book that I'm going to be reading for today's video is going to be Earthlings by Sayaka Murata, and this one was recommended on 2 different YouTube videos as well. It was recommended again from Leah Crumpton and then again from Biblio Obscura on YouTube. And I'm really excited to read Earthlings because earlier this year I actually read Convenience Store Woman, and I really liked that one, but my one complaint with that book was that I wanted it to be slightly more weird and unhinged. And then literally everybody was like, well then you need to read Earthlings because that's one of the weirdest books ever. And again, all I knew about this book jumping into this one is that we're following this young girl who believes that her and her cousin are aliens. And then I also heard that this book is really dark and really fucked up and really twisted, and that there's a lot of trigger warnings for like everything that you can imagine in this book. But I am excited for today's video because I do have 2 books from authors that I have read before and then 2 books from authors that I've never read before. The only other book that I've read from this author was Death in Her Hands, and I wasn't the biggest fan of that one. So it does make me a little bit nervous to be reading another book from this author, but hopefully this one ends up being a better time. So yeah, that is the TBR for this video, so let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm so excited!
As long as I'm alive, we gon' keep on making
morning. Hello. I wanted to update you because I have started reading I'm a Fan. This morning I just got about 76 pages in. I'm about 39% of the way through the audiobook already. I decided to, drive down here to Bellingham this morning because I wanted to get an acai bowl, and I started off the morning so good. I just feel so refreshed and I feel like a whole new person, and it's actually really warm out today. Feels like one of those like end of summer days, so I just decided to come down here and like eat my acai bowl by the water. I've been listening to this on audio, and so far this has been going well. This is definitely a weird book in the sense that it's written from the perspective of a narrator who is so far unnamed. We don't know the name of the protagonist in this book, but the thing that makes this book weird is that our narrator has this stalker behavior. She's really obsessed with this other woman, and she's obsessed with this woman who's sleeping with the same guy that she is. So it's almost like, I don't even know if she's so obsessed with her specifically. I think it's more like she's actually obsessed with the guy that she's sleeping with, and she's really trying to figure out like ways that she can be more appealing to him, I guess, is like more of what's going on. But it is really interesting, because she really is like stalking this woman online, really. Like she'll be sitting there like refreshing her Instagram page like over and over and over again, being like, I know that she posts every single day at this time, and she's like waiting on her newest updates. She really does seem to know a lot about her life, and she's like always taking screenshots of like whatever she's got going on, which is really, it's unsettling. But I am really liking the writing style in this. It is very like stream of consciousness. Like you're just really in the head of this main character for this entire story. I like that the chapters are broken up into like little bite-sized chapters. Like the last ones that I just read, both of these chapters were like so freaking short, but I really love that about this. And I do think that some of it has been very like thought-provoking and very interesting. This author has a lot of different messages that they're trying to push about like society, about like feminism, about like different things in our culture that like don't really make sense. And this guy that both of these women are sleeping with, like he has a wife, and he just does not seem like the coolest person. He keeps saying he has a wife, and he keeps forgetting that he's married, or he keeps forgetting that he's in this like serious relationship. So he kind of sounds like a total douchebag, and both of these women are sleeping with him, so like who knows how many women are actually sleeping with him. But yeah, so far I am enjoying this. I'm finding the writing to be very engaging. Like this is a very easy one to listen to on audio, and I'm pretty sure that the author actually narrates the audiobook, which is really cool. I'm just so curious to see like how unhinged this one is gonna get, because I'm like, is this book considered to be like kind of weird just because it's about a girl who's like stalking another girl on the internet basically, or is it gonna get weirder and get even more unhinged? Because I'm hoping that that's the case. I'm hoping that this will go in a direction that I like don't see coming, but we will see. I'm gonna continue listening to this one on audio today. The audiobook itself is only like 5 hours long. It's pretty short. I mean, gosh, this book is only 203 pages. Like it is a short one, so I shouldn't have any issue finishing up the rest of this today. I think right now I'm actually gonna head to Winco. I need to do some grocery shopping while I'm out here, so I'm gonna do that, and then after that I'll probably head home and finish up the rest of this book. That is so good. Okay, hello. I just got back home from the grocery store. Just finished listening to I'm a Fan on audio. Dude, this audiobook was so quick. And I really did end up enjoying this. I don't think it was like the perfect 5-star for me. It didn't really give me that 5-star feeling, but I think I'm gonna end up giving this one 4 stars. I feel like this story was so unique in a way because I realized that not only do we never get the name of our protagonist, but we also never get the name of the woman that she's stalking, which I don't know why it took me a second longer to realize that. We don't get the names of like any characters in this book, because whenever she talks about her, she says, the woman I am obsessed with. Like that's how she refers to her. And then she also says, the man I want to be with is like the man that she's talking about in this book. So she never gives them a name. And I'm embarrassed to say that I only noticed this after I was kind of like, why does she always say like the woman that I'm obsessed with? Like, can't you just refer to her by name? And then I realized, oh, we've never actually gotten her name. I do think this book had a surprising amount of social commentary in this that I wasn't really expecting, which I really enjoyed. I thought the writing style in general, it was very like stream of consciousness, but it was also very like thought-provoking. And I feel like this author did a good job at presenting the reader with like these different ideas. And because this woman that she's like, so obsessed with in this book, she is a white woman and she is a big like influencer. Like she has a big following online. And then this man that she's also involved with, that she like really wants to be with him, he's also white. And so there's a lot of different conversations about like race and class and privilege and all these different things that I wasn't really anticipating with this, that I really liked. There were just so many good quotes relating to this, especially in the second half of the book, when she says things like, "The woman I am obsessed with says she is sad and worried about the state of America, and I think it's a funny thing to feel sad or feel anything about racism, because what a luxury." I also think there's a lot of really good conversations in this book about how men have unlimited opportunities and unlimited time when it comes to, you know, pursuing their careers and like the things that they want out of life, whereas like women face a lot more obstacles in life. There's a lot of talk about how like women can be seen as invaluable to society if they don't want children, but then how also like for the women who do decide to get married and have children, they might have to put their careers on pause and go through all these different obstacles and hoops that men could never understand. There was also this other quote that I thought was really great when she said, "It takes me a long time to realize that when the man I want to be with tells me he likes being seen with me in public, what he means is he enjoys what my skin color says about him to other people." That is very interesting. I really did end up liking this a lot. I thought the writing style was interesting. It really worked for me. I thought it was very thought-provoking. I think the only reason why this wasn't 5 stars for me is because I wanted a little bit more from that ending. I'm not gonna lie, the ending of this feels very abrupt and like the story just ends. And like looking back on it, I totally understand why the author decided to end the book there, but I also feel like I personally wanted the ending to get a little bit more unhinged and like a little bit more weird. You know, I did really like the overall story. Like I do love a story like this where we're following from the perspective of somebody who's like a little bit obsessive and a little bit stalkerish of another person online. Like I just find that to be really interesting to follow. So I really loved all of those elements about it. I just wish it got a little bit more unhinged and like a little bit weird in the end. I think I was correct in my assumption that this was probably going to end up being the least weird thing that I would read for this video. I almost kind of wish that this book went off in a direction that was more on the horror side. All right, next up, I think I'm going to get started on Boy Parts. I think this is going to be the next one that I'm going to read. I don't actually have the audiobook for this one. I think this is another book where like the audiobook is only available through Audible, so like that's kind of annoying. I think I'm going to try to read this one with my eyeballs next, so wish me luck. Hello, it has been many hours. I took a shower and I washed my hair, and I also made a really great dinner. It's kind of like a tater tot nachos kind of thing, except instead of the tater tots, I just used like the square potato hash browns from Winco. But it turned out really good, but I wanted to update you because I have started on Boy Parts and I got 88 pages in, and I'm so sorry, but this is not the book for me. Like I am just really not vibing with this. So unfortunately, I think I'm gonna DNF this at 88 pages to prevent myself from giving this 1 star, because that is how passionately I am not liking this so far. I kind of wish that I had looked more into what this book was actually about before picking it up, because the plot of this book is just not pulling me in at all. Basically, we're just following this character named Irina, and she's working in a bar, but what she's mainly doing on the side is she's taking these really explicit photos of average looking men, and she's doing a lot of like nude photo shoots with men. And so right at the start of this book, there's this mother who comes into the bar where she works, and she's like, "How dare you take pictures of my son who's underage?" She's like, "What are you talking about? He brought his ID, he's 18 years old." And she's like, "No, that was the ID of my other son." And so she like threatens to sue her because she took these like nude photos of her like 16-year-old son or something. And then the lady literally goes up and like clocks her and just hits her in the restaurant. And so right at the start of this book, she's like dealing with that situation, and her job kind of like sends her home with paid leave for a while as she deals with that. And then this story is just about her being obnoxious with her friends and like partying and doing a lot of drugs and getting drunk and describing all of the differences between all of the drugs that they're doing. And then she's also trying to like scout for different men that she can take more pictures of. She's like handing out her cards to these different men. And you know what's weird is that this book is marketed as horror, but you know, at this point in time, like where is the horror? There's nothing happening. So far, I feel like this story is definitely just feeling like a character study about Irina's character, but honestly, I could give less than 2 fucks about Irina. Like, I do not care about her character. There really is just nothing about the writing style in this book that is working for me. I'm finding all of the characters to be really irritating. Honestly, unless you like hearing about the difference between doing cocaine versus doing acid versus doing all these different drugs, I don't think that I would recommend this. I mean, here's a direct quote. It says, "There is something particularly visceral about sniffing drugs off your fingernails. It's like eating rice straight out of the pot with your fingers." And then it just goes on to describe the the feeling of that for a couple pages and describing them dancing at this party and trying all these different cigarettes and drinking all these different drinks. Like, bro, I don't care. I'm also kind of lost at this point in time on like what about this book is so weird besides the fact that she's, you know, yeah, taking pictures of nude men that aren't that attractive. Like, I guess that's a weird thing to do. And like maybe the weirdness doesn't happen until a little bit later on, but I can tell you right now, I do not care where this book is going. I almost know for a fact that if I tried to finish this book, I would probably rate it 1 or 2 stars. Like, this is just not for me. It's truly unfortunate that I'm gonna have to DNF this one for this video, so I'm really hoping that these next 2 books end up going a lot better. It has been like 24 hours since the last time that I updated this vlog. So yesterday I ended up starting my year of rest and relaxation and I got about 82 pages in. And then yesterday I literally just went to my parents' house and me and my mom, we ended up binge watching the entirety of this show on Netflix called Pop Star Academy. It's this like documentary series on Netflix about the forming of this new girl group that's under HYBE, which is like the same label as BTS. And dude, if you are a K-pop fan, then like I highly recommend watching this documentary on Netflix. I thought it was very interesting, and it's basically like a competition type of show where these girls undergo years of training where they do like dancing and singing and all kinds of stuff like that, and then they have about 20 girls and they're trying to get down to 6 girls to be in the official group. I don't know, I thought the show was just very interesting, and there was some crazy shit that happened in those last few episodes that like I don't know how I feel about any of that, but it was still a really unique and interesting show, and I really liked seeing the process of like how they go through different K-pop training. They basically like put these girls through K-pop training, but they're gonna be like a regular pop group. Like they're not gonna be attached to K-pop because they are a global group, because they have girls from like all over the world in this group. I don't know, I think the concept for this show is very interesting, and I can't wait to like watch this girl group and like see what kind of music they come out with in the future. So I have started this one, and this book is actually going pretty well so far. You know, I've only ever read one book by this author in the past. I read Death in Her Hands, and I wasn't the biggest fan of that one, so I wasn't sure how I was going to end up feeling about this one, but this one has a very interesting writing style to it so far. I mean, something about it that I am not the most obsessed with is the fact that it has very long chapters. I mean, chapter 2 just started on page 52, so like the first chapter is pretty long, and I'm still in chapter 2 after 82 pages in, so like the chapters are very lengthy, but I'm also listening to this one on audio, so like I don't even notice, or I don't tend to mind as much that the chapters are pretty long. This one's really interesting because we're following this woman who is living in New York City, and she's living there in the year 2000, and she's kind of talking about how she like really wants to hibernate. And so I think the like my year of rest and relaxation is the fact that she wants to try and like sleep for a whole year, or she wants to like hibernate for a whole year, as she calls it. And I think that that's very interesting. Like, it's definitely weird. She also has this like very strange friendship with this woman named Riva, and like I don't know, she just doesn't treat her very well, so it's like interesting to see their friendship, but she doesn't really have like anybody else in her life at this point. I don't know, there's something about the writing of this book that I am really enjoying so far. Like, it feels like it's written in a way where it's very like darkly funny, and I am connecting with it a little bit more than I was expecting to, at least like right off the bat. I don't know, I'm only 80 pages in, so like I'm still pretty early in the story, but I am liking this a little bit more than I thought that I would, so I think that's a great sign. But today, it's a Sunday afternoon. I just made myself an iced coffee downstairs. I'm still drinking my usual drink, which is basically just a chai latte with 1 shot of espresso in it, because I just love it so much. But anyways, I think I'm just going to go ahead and try to finish up this book today, and I hope the rest of it goes just as well. Okay, hello, it's a little bit later in the afternoon. I just got out of the gym and it's freaking hot today, dude. It's already September, but yet it's still like 90 degrees outside today. Like, make it make sense. It is so hot. But anyways, while I was at the gym, I literally finished reading my Year of Rest and Relaxation and like, dude, what the heck? Am I gonna give this book 5 stars? Like, was this 5 stars? I'm kind of torn right now over whether I want to rate this book like 4.5 stars, but maybe it is 5 stars. Cause that ending, what the fuck, dude? The last line of this book in the last chapter, like the whole last chapter, it was like my jaw was hanging open in shock. Like, I couldn't believe the book ended in that way. I mean, I don't want to overhype this because I could see so many people reading this and hating it. In fact, I do see so many people, you know, reading this book and saying like, this is so bizarre and pretentious and weird. Yeah, you could say that like nothing really happens in this story and that it's really slow and it's really more of like a character study. But there was something about this that just really worked for me. Like, this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say I just want a weird book. This is like the closest thing that I've read to Big Swiss. Like, something that gives me the same feeling that I had while reading Big Swiss. And I don't know how to explain it. I just really loved this. I loved the writing in it. I thought it was so weird. And like, our main character in this book, like, she's not a great person, you know, like she's actually kind of like a stone cold bitch at times. But it's also like one of those books where you can't really pull your eyes away from the train wreck that you're seeing. I also think, as somebody who has dealt with some insomnia in their lifetime, this was a little bit like, whoa, to read, you know, because the whole thing of this book has a lot to do with this character and her sleeping habits, whether that's like her struggling to sleep and like she's unable to get to sleep no matter how many different drugs that she's taking, but then also her desire to like sleep for a very long time. I almost feel like this all could be like a metaphor for depression and, you know, like how it feels when you just kind of want to like sleep through your life and you don't feel motivated to like do anything in your life. And I just think this book in general, like the tone of it was pretty sad, even though it was like darkly funny at times. I do think that this book was really sad, you know, and like this character's life was really sad. Like the story about how her parents died and just like all of the different things that she's gone through in her life. Like, I don't know, it was pretty sad. I also loved the fact that this took place in New York City in the year of 2000 for the most part. There was just something about it that felt so nostalgic to me because of that. Also, her friendship with Riva in this book, like, God, it was just so toxic, but it was only really toxic because of our protagonist. Like, for the most part, I was like, damn, poor Riva, like, what the heck? Like, she just treated her so poorly, but their friendship was also very fascinating for me to read in a weird way. I think it's funny too how on the back blurb here it kind of talks about how our character deals with one of the worst psychiatrists in literature, and I'm like, yeah, dude, this psychiatrist that she has in this book, oh my god, she was so frustrating. And I think it really just goes to show like how important it is to like get help when you need help, but also to get help from somebody who like knows what the fuck they're talking about. This is just an example of the kind of writing in this book and the reason why I feel like this is all related to depression, or it can all be linked to the idea of depression. When she said nothing seemed really real, sleeping, waking, it all collided into one gray monotonous plane ride through the clouds. I didn't talk to myself in my head. There wasn't much to say. This was how I knew the sleep was having an effect. I was growing less and less attached to life. If I kept going, I thought I'd disappear completely, then reappear in some new form. This was my hope. This was the dream. God damn, isn't that writing just so interesting? I really agree. I saw my friend Max, he reviewed this on Goodreads, and I love the way that he talks about how this book is bizarre and wonderful and how he really connects with like the weirdness of her writing. I also love that he says in his review that this author doesn't shy away from the things people usually hesitate to discuss, and that she's fine with making her main characters off-putting, and that it's actually very refreshing to read, and I would totally agree. I don't think that this is going to be the kind of book that works for everyone though. Like, I just want to emphasize that I feel like there's going to be so many people who read this book and just absolutely hate it and don't see anything interesting about the story. But for me, holy shit, I really clicked with this, which I'm really shocked that I love this as much as I did, because I have read this author in the past and I thought Death in Her Hands was just, I don't know, it was okay. It was like a 3-star. It was very forgettable for me. I mean, I am really glad that I just got that book Eileen. That's like another one of her really popular books. So I definitely want to prioritize that and read that book sooner rather than later, because I loved this so much. This is exactly what my hope was with doing a video like this, was that I would be able to find something that's kind of weird, but that I would end up loving. So like, this is great. I think I am gonna give this 5 stars. I think I have to. Like, the more that I'm talking about it and the more that I'm thinking about it, I think this is gonna leave such a long-lasting impression on me. I am like dying of heat in this car. I don't know if you can tell. I am sweating and I'm disgusting. I need to go home and shower. But tomorrow I'm gonna get started on the last book for this video, Earthlings. And I'm worried that I might have saved like the most weird and horrific book for last. But I'm hopeful. Like, what if we could have another 5-star on our hands? Like, I don't know what to expect with Earthlings. And I think Earthlings has been the one that I am like the most excited to read out of these 4 books. So like, let's do it! Hi, hello. It is now the next day. I just spent the last hour or so sitting in the park and reading. I also went to one of my local favorite coffee spots in town and I picked up an iced coffee on the way here. And it's been so nice out today. It's like actually really cloudy and overcast and it's kind of cold. I don't know, it's only about like 65 degrees today and it feels incredible. But anyway, I wanted to update you because I have started on Earthlings. I actually just hit page 106 and like, wow, y'all were not kidding when you said that this book is dark and twisted and fucked up, because it's already been so fucked up in a way that I'm like, damn, like this is really dark. So something about this book that I find fascinating is the fact that it's only about 247 pages and there's only 6 chapters. So like right now, over 100 pages in, I'm only on chapter 3. So the chapters in this book are really long. So far, each one of the chapters has been 35 pages and then the next one was like 60 something pages, but I actually don't mind it as much. Like listening to this one on audio, the pacing of this book feels like it's going very fast, so I don't even notice the fact that this book has really long chapters. But like, damn, everything about this book is tough to read. I'm not gonna lie. This is one of those books that you read and you just feel incredibly icky and like, I don't even think that this is something I should be reading about, but yet there's something so interesting about it, and the writing style is really good in this. You know, because I have read from this author before. I read Convenience Store Woman, and there is just something about the way that this author writes that I really do like this author's writing. Like, I feel connected to it right away. But this book is a tough read because we're following this very young girl and she starts to believe that she's an alien, that she was like an alien who got dropped into her family, which in a way I can really relate to this, you know, because as a kid I was really obsessed with space and really fascinated by space and learning about it and learning about aliens too. I mean, I still am, you know, even as an adult, I'm really obsessed with space and fascinated by the idea of aliens. But in this story, we're following this young girl who, like, her best friend is this stuffed little hedgehog, and then her only human friend who she has, you know, romantic feelings for is actually her cousin, this young boy named Yu. And so there is some, you know, incestual things happening between her and her cousin, which is kind of like awkward and like, it kind of makes you feel icky to read about in and of itself. I mean, they're only like, I want to say she's like 6 or 7 years old. Like, she is like a little girl at the beginning of the story when these things are happening, but it's still like, oh my god, yikes, ew, you know, like they're related, they're cousins. And so not only is that happening though, but there's also like a really awful relationship that you're reading about between her and her teacher and this man who is very clearly, you know, like gaslighting her, sexually abusing her, molesting her. Like, it is not easy to read. There's like some on-page sexual things happening with the teacher, and it's like, oh my god, it's horrifying to read, especially because this entire book you're reading from the perspective of this young girl. And it's like, yeah, you wonder why she's starting to feel like an alien. It's probably because of all of these different traumatic things that she's going through. I feel like this book really might lean in, you know, to this commentary about like what happens when young girls like this get sexually abused at such a young age and how that goes on to affect them. Something that was really interesting though that I wasn't expecting is that starting on chapter 3, we do get a time jump. So like our main protagonist is no longer a little girl, and now she's like 31 years old and she's married to this asexual man. And all of this is mentioned in the premise of the book because it talks about how now that she's grown, she's living a quiet life with her asexual husband, but dark shadows and societal pressure are pursuing her. It says, fleeing the suburbs for the mountains of her childhood, she prepares herself for a reunion with you. Will he still remember their promise, and will he help her keep it? But yeah, that's kind of what I mean about how like this book feels very icky to be reading things like this. Like it is not an easy read, and I feel like my face was probably like throughout like half the scenes in this book. It is a tough read, but there is something about this book that makes me want to continue reading it. Like I'm really invested in her as a character and I want to see where the story's going. But I definitely feel like, oh my god, if I do end up enjoying this book, this is gonna be one of those books that like I don't know if I can just recommend this, you know, because like reading about this is awful, but there is something about it that's like it's interesting still. I think this author is doing such an incredible job of writing from the perspective of a young girl. Like those first 100 pages, there's something about the way she writes this like childhood innocence and like this childhood wonder about the world. I feel like kids have such wild imaginations, and I feel like we really tend to lose that, you know, as we age. So I do really find it impressive when authors can like capture, you know, like that childhood imagination that we all had growing up. I feel like she's doing a great job with that, and it's really heartbreaking to be honest. And so now that I'm at the point where she's a little bit older, I'm curious to see how like the story's gonna change. I'm just so curious to see where this could go. I only have about 150 pages left, and I'm just like, how much weirder can this get, you know, because it's already been pretty freaking weird. Man, I really wanted to like stay in the park and read a little bit longer today, but like the bugs were starting to like drive me nuts. Like they were just all around me, and then there was a lot of like screaming children in the park, and there was something about reading this book, especially in a park. I was like, yeah, this is not like a public park kind of read, you know? So like this is a book that makes me feel uncomfortable just to be reading it in the first place. So like reading this surrounded by children in a park, there was something about that that just felt wrong, but I do think I want to try to finish up this book today, so we'll have to see how the rest of it goes. The fuck? I just finished reading Earthlings, and like, holy shit, what the fuck did I just read? I sincerely, genuinely mean that. Like, what the actual fuck did I just read? I think this book wins. You know, this book takes the cake for being the weirdest book that I've ever read. This book wins for being the most shocking book that I've ever read. I don't think I could have predicted where this story was going at any given point. And listen, okay, listen, do I recommend this book? No. I don't want people to read this because of me, but I'm gonna give this 5 stars. I have to. And if you read this because of me, no, you didn't. But like, holy shit, I have to give this 5 stars, okay? I have to, for a few different reasons. The first thing being that this book surprised the hell out of me. It shocked me at every single turn. I read so many books, okay? Like I read over 200 books in any given year, and it is so rare for me to have this feeling of being like completely shocked and disturbed and unsettled, but also like just the plot in general, like it was just so bizarre, and it kept getting more and more bizarre. And if you thought that was the end of the trigger warnings for the things that I previously mentioned, oh my god, like that was only just the start. There are some things towards the end of this book especially that like, holy shit, it gets so graphic, like so violently graphic and disturbing. It literally made my stomach like do a somersault. Like it is disgusting. It's gory, it's over the top, and it is just so weird and so bizarre. Like the ending of this book, I had to reread that last page like 3 times because I'm like, what the fuck did I just read? But there was just something about this that really worked for me personally. I think when a book can really shock me in this way, I think that's a huge plus. And this is the kind of book that like I could not pull my eyes away from the page the entire time I was reading this book. Even though I was listening to this on audio while I was following along with the physical copy, I wasn't just listening to the audiobook when I was driving like I usually do, because I was like, no, I need to have my eyes on the page for this. And I ended up tabbing so much anytime that I was like shocked by something that was happening on page. I was like, holy shit. But another reason why I want to give this one 5 stars and why why it worked so much for me personally is because I've always been fascinated by the idea of like space and aliens, and I think that this book took that to like a whole nother level, like very extreme. This book is just so unhinged that like I want to take back any other time that I've said another book is unhinged, because it doesn't even come close to being how unhinged this book is. I also think another reason why this book worked for me specifically is because I do love the overall message in this book about how we as human beings are expected to act a certain way in society, and how we're expected to do certain things, you know, like getting married and having children, and how we're not really seen as valuable in a society unless we do these things. And you know, this character definitely feels a lot of pressure from her family to like be normal and to like get a husband and like have children and you know, continue the family line and like all of these things. And I really think there is a strong takeaway and a big message throughout this book of like, we shouldn't have to live this way if we don't want to, and like choosing to like live your own individual life. I think that's a big takeaway for me from this. But then I also think this book is a big exploration on like trauma, you know, and like what can happen to you psychologically when you experience trauma at such a young age. I never like in books where you're just reading about violence just for the sake of violence, or you're reading about these awful things just for entertainment value. I think that that's really like sickening sometimes. But in stories like this, I guess I don't mind it as much because there is a bigger conversation happening here, and there's so many different conversations that you could have about this book and these characters, which is why I guess it doesn't bother me as much. Like if it's necessary for storytelling, then like I'll get through these uncomfortable scenes. But like, wow, dude. Wow. I do not recommend reading this if any of the trigger warnings sound like something you wouldn't want to read, because like, wow, this book is extreme in a lot of ways. And I think in a lot of ways, this is the definition of something that will intentionally make you very uncomfortable. You feel very icky and like gross afterwards, almost in the way that it reminds me of like extreme horror, just a little bit. After finishing this book, I kind of just like stared at the wall for like 5 minutes, and I was just like, I don't even know what to think. I don't even know what to say. And my like sister walked into my room and she's like, why are you staring at the wall? And I was like, because I just read like the weirdest book that I've ever read, and I don't even know how to vocalize my feelings about it. And so she was like, well, what's the book about? And I was like talking about it with her, and she was like, that sounds awful. And I was like, I know. And it is awful. And like trying to explain this plot to anybody else, I can see why anybody else thinking this would be like, why would you give that book 5 stars? Like, why? And I really think at the end of the day, it's because I try to ask myself, like, why do I read books? And it's like, at the end of the day, I think I really do read books to be entertained, you know, and like I read books because I want books to be weird and to like push boundaries and to make me think about things. Like I want books to be thought-provoking and really interesting. And I feel like this book definitely did all of those things for me. Like this was one of the most entertaining reads that I've had in a long time, at least in terms of like keeping me engaged the entire time, even through reading things that were so uncomfortable and so disgusting and just horrific. I still couldn't pull my eyes away from what was happening, you know? And I did really feel connected to our main protagonist throughout the story, and I was often just like, whoa, like being in her head was so fascinating and so bizarre. Just hard for me to want to give a book like this 5 stars, because then I am afraid that some of you are gonna pick this up and you're gonna read this and absolutely hate it, and then you're gonna be like, what the fuck is wrong with her? Like, why would she give that book 5 stars? So I'm sorry, I do not recommend that you pick this up because of me, because it is weird and bizarre in a way that you might not expect and you might not enjoy. But I can't deny that this really worked for me, and this story is gonna stick with me literally forever. I just know it. Like, this was the most bizarre thing that I've ever read in my life. At the beginning of this video project, I really wasn't sure how it was gonna go, because I was just nervous, I guess, when some people recommend a book as being weird. I feel like the term weird is very subjective, you know, and a lot of people have different ways that they would use that word and what they mean when they say that a book is weird. But so many of the books in this vlog ended up really working for me. I mean, the fact that I had 2 5 stars and another book that I gave like around 4 stars, like that is so incredible. And so because this vlog was so successful, I can definitely see myself doing a round 2 of this in the future, of like reading some more weird books. So if you do have any weird book recommendations that you think that I would enjoy based off the ones that I liked in this video, then definitely leave them down below in the comments. I would love any recommendations that you have, because my mind is currently blown over Earthlings right now. Like, I don't think I'm ever gonna get over this book. Like, I don't really think it's possible. Thank you so much for watching, as always, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!